I decided in the spring of 2021 to clean a number of the family gravestones in the Quinte area. Cleaning gravestones can be a lot of work, particularly if there are many gravestones to be maintained, or their condition has significantly deteriorated due to weathering and plant growth. I started doing research using the internet to determine best practices when cleaning gravestones. It soon became clear that some experts may have found a way to maintain gravestones with a minimum of effort while protecting the gravestones from further damage during the cleaning process. Can you read this stone? This gravestone is so badly deteriorated that even careful cleaning might not restore the stone to a point where its inscription can be clearly read. However, carefully cleaning the stone would be a good first step toward actually discovering what the inscription tells us. Can you read this stone? Although this stone has weathered to a significant degree, there is some information available from it depending on the time of day, the angle of the sun, and the inclination of shadows as they play across the relief which still exists on the stone. Still, reading all the information on this stone might still be a challenge. Unfortunately, many gravestones exist in this challenging condition, or even worse. Cleaning the stone might well reveal much or all of the original information. Can you read this veteran stone in the Arlington Military Cemetery in the United States? Certainly. Although this stone was only put into place in 2017, every letter and symbol is clear, easy to read, and will continue in this pristine condition due to the careful maintenance carried out on tens of thousands of veteran stones in military cemeteries across the United States. There are military gravestones over 150 years old which are equally clear to read if the stone has been properly maintained over the years. Could you read these stones in the Beechwood Military Cemetery in Ottawa, Canada? Definitely. You could easily read the information on these stones because the gravestones have been properly cleaned and maintained over the years, preserving their information for generations to come. Clearly, the public servants whose responsibility it is to preserve military gravestones in both Canada and the United States know what they're doing when it comes to maintaining military tombstones. Best practices for cleaning gravestones are straightforward, well-known, and frequently publicized to the genealogy community. Check local ordinances and get permission to clean the stones in question. Confirm the stones are solid on their base and not going to shift or fall. Use water, soft bristle brushes, plastic scrapers, and wooden picks to remove organic growth and dirt from the stone. Avoid harsh chemicals and high-velocity power washers, as any of these invasive approaches can damage the stones. Some excellent tips for cleaning gravestones can be found on the internet, like on the website for Billion Graves. As part of my research into my gravestone cleaning project, I reviewed what is used in the military cemeteries in both Canada and the United States. I discovered that the United States administration in charge of military cemeteries only approves 4 products for use on veterans' headstones. One of these was D2 biological solution, a quaternary ammonium solution with additives to enhance cleaning. The product website states, D2 biological solution is a biodegradable, easy-to-use liquid that removes stains from mold, algae, mildew, lichens, and air pollutants. It is effective on marble, granite, limestone, brownstone, travertine, masonry, terracotta, concrete, stucco, wood, and other architectural surfaces, including monuments, sculptures, and headstones. A contact time of only 10 to 15 minutes, followed by scrubbing with a soft nylon or natural bristle brush, will loosen most biological growth and remove air pollutant staining. I decided to give D2 biological solution a try on the family tombstones that I planned to clean. A week of searching websites for Home Hardware, Lowe's, Rona, Home Depot, Canadian Tire, Walmart, and even Amazon proved to me that D2 biological solution was very difficult to buy in Canada, at least from the big box stores. Fortunately, a new product had just been approved in the United States for use on veterans' headstones as a substitute for D2 biological solution. This newly approved product was named Wet and Forget, and, like D2 biological solution, was a quaternary ammonium compound with tombstone-safe cleaning additives. A search of Amazon found the product for sale in numerous forms. As of November 2022, Wet and Forget can be purchased in a variety of Canadian stores. Wet and forget claims to remove moss, mold, algae, lichens, and environmental staining from a variety of surfaces, including tombstones. Moreover, Wet and forget claims that you can simply spray a surface and walk away, confident that Wet and forget would continue working to clean the surface over time. It was this last claim, that one could simply wet the tombstone and forget about it, that I decided to put to the test in my tombstone cleaning project. Wet and forget has a far more extensive marketing program than D2 Biological Solution. The following series of before and after illustrations from the Wet and Forget website allegedly show the power of Wet and Forget cleaning tombstones. Bearing in mind that these shots are promotional in nature and likely biased, let's look at what Wet and Forget wants us to see. This tombstone for Asa Durfee was likely erected about 1889. The after photo shows that all the information can be clearly read from the clean tombstone. The American flag behind the tombstone and the insignia at the top of the tombstone suggest that this grave marker belonged to an American veteran, possibly from the Civil War in the United States. This tombstone for Jesse Corman from about 1851 presents as much improved after the application of Wet and Forget. The symbol and the writing are clearly legible, and the presence of an American flag may again suggest a veteran's gravesite. This tombstone for Elizabeth, with the family name of Ledoux, appears much improved after the application of Wet and Forget. The original carving on this grave marker did not produce writing in high relief, and this makes some parts of the tombstone difficult to read, even though the stone has been cleaned. Having noted that deficiency in the original carving, I believe that in the right lighting conditions, I could discover all the information on the stone once it was cleaned. This tombstone commemorates two American Civil War soldiers, George Washington and Winfield Jesse, who died in 1862, probably in the same battle. Even the small inscription near the top of the stone identifying the soldiers as belonging to the 9th Regiment can be clearly read once the stone was cleaned. All of these tombstones, cleaned with Wet and Forget, are far more readable in the after photo, and therefore the clean stones are far more useful to family historians. I purchased a container of Wet and Forget concentrate from Amazon, which I mixed in a 4-to-1 ratio with distilled water. I had selected 2 family tombstones for my field test. The field test started on May 8, 2021. This flat stone memorialized my maternal grandfather and grandmother and my parents in the Belleville Cemetery. This pink granite gravestone, laid down in 1967, was in a shaded area near the shore of the Bay of Quinte. This stone had been largely covered with a combination of black mold and possibly environmental pollution, both of which were claimed to be removable using Wet and Forget. So on May 8, 2021, I sprayed this stone with my Wet and Forget solution and, as the advertising suggests, just walked away. The second stone I chose for my field test was a vertical pink granite tombstone on the west side of the Belleville Cemetery. This stone memorialized Henry Wixon and Lucy Cook, the original Wixon immigrants from Gloucestershire, England, my paternal great-grandparents, who arrived in 1911. Lucy Wixon died in 1921, and Henry passed away in 1930. This gravestone had been in place for approximately 100 years. This tombstone was also in a fairly shaded area, having a tree overhead and a dense hedgerow roughly 30 feet behind the stone. This vertical tombstone showed evidence of significant lichen growth, as well as some environmental staining, and as a result was difficult to read. As with the horizontal stone, I sprayed the front, top, and base of this tombstone with Wet and Forget, and again, just walked away. Having returned to view my project a couple of times, on June 15, 2021, roughly 5 weeks after the initial application of Wet and Forget, I returned to document the effect of my spraying in photos. Since rain was in the weather forecast, there was no application of Wet and Forget. The black mold staining on the horizontal stone appeared to have shrunk significantly, although 2 or 3 intense patches still remained. There was a general improvement in the color of the pink granite for the horizontal gravestone. Nothing had been done to clean the grave marker other than to spray it with Wet and Forget and walk away during previous visit. On this June 15, 2021 visit, I also reviewed the state of the vertical stone. In the intervening 5 weeks, I had noticed an increasing flaking of the lichens on top of the vertical stone. These lichens appeared to be losing their adhesion to the surface of the stone. Some lichens had fallen to the ground at the base of the vertical stone, perhaps removed by wind or rain. I felt at this time mild scrubbing with a soft bristle brush could have removed much more of the lichen growth on the vertical stone. However, I left the stone untouched in order to let Wet and Forget do its work. On July 4, 2021, approximately 2 months after the initial application of Wet and Forget, I observed that some black mold was still present on the horizontal stone, but that the patches were shrinking in size and the color of the pink granite was becoming clearer. A heavy rain had swept through the area before my July 4, 2021 visit, and it was obvious that there was accelerated lifting and flaking of the lichen growth on the top of the vertical stone. Some lichen growth on the front face of the stone was also flaking and falling to the ground. Clearly, Wet and Forget was working more quickly on the top of the vertical stone. I estimated that upwards of 60% of the lichen growth had lifted, and many patches had been washed away by the rain or blown away by the wind. There was a noticeable collection of large patches of dead lichen on the ground near the base of the vertical tombstone. This slide shows a small sample of the patches of dead lichen using a Canadian quarter to estimate size. My sixth visit on July 14, 2021, followed a period of heavy rain throughout the Quinte area. The horizontal stone showed a configuration of the black staining in roughly the same places as 2 weeks earlier, although the area of the stain appeared to be still shrinking. The vertical stone appeared marginally cleaner on the front face on July 14. Patches of lichen growth on the top of the stone continued to loosen and lift away from the stone's surface. More patches of lichen were visible on the ground at the base of the vertical stone. I had decided at the beginning of my project to end this field test after 3 months on August 8, 2021. On the vertical stone, the death and natural removal of the lichen growth was obvious. A large percentage of the dead lichen growth had indeed been washed or blown away by the element, but not all, as was the claim by the manufacturers of Wet and Forget. Perhaps 3 months was not enough time for nature to kill and remove all of the dead lichens on the vertical stone. I planned to return in October and November to determine if lichen growth had begun again. At this point, I applied a very gentle brushing with a soft bristle brush to the top, front, and base of the vertical stone. Perhaps, given more time, nature would have removed the rest of the dead lichen growth, but I chose not to wait. In this photo, there are still some patches of dead lichens visible on the top of the stone. These remaining patches had fully detached from the stone and recently lying on top of the stone, having not yet been removed by wind or rain. A very gentle brushing with a soft bristle brush removed all of the dead lichens from the top of the stone. The remaining lichen growth on the rest of the stone was very easily removed by the soft brush. I concluded that Wet and Forget did an extremely credible job killing all the lichens, even if the forces of nature were slow to remove the dead material from the stone, perhaps due to the overhanging tree branches and the dense windbreak behind the stone. On the horizontal stone, the situation was not so clear-cut. The original problem was black mold and the staining it created, rather than lichen growth. Overall, although the stone was much cleaner and brighter than when this field test began, there were still patches of black stain on the surface of the horizontal stone. I rubbed one of the patches of black stain with a soft kitchen sponge and applied Wet and Forget to the stained area. The rubbing did nothing to remove or even reduce the area of the stain on the horizontal stone. This was the appearance of the horizontal stone when the field test began on May 8, 2021. On August 14, 2021, I made a final visit to my field test stones. Although the appearance of the black mold stains on the horizontal stone were visibly reduced during the field test, there were still traces of dark discoloration where the mold had been thickest. A before and after comparison clearly revealed that Wet and Forget very significantly reduced black mold and its stain, but did not remove them entirely, at least in the 3 months covered by my field test. This was the appearance of the vertical stone when the field test began on May 8, 2021. Most, if not all, of the lichen growth on the vertical stone had been removed, either through the action of rain and wind or by the one-time application of a very gentle brushing with a soft bristle brush. Although this stone was now clean, given the fact that the relief on the stone is not deeply carved and that the stone is sitting under a fairly large tree, putting the stone in perpetual shade, The information is still clearly readable thanks to Wet and Forget. A return visit on October 2021, after a 2-month interval, revealed that the vertical stone was still lichen-free, and that the horizontal stone actually looked better after 2 months' absence. The faint patches of black mold stain visible in an earlier visit had almost completely disappeared, suggesting perhaps that Wet and Forget continued to work after the field test. Several conclusions regarding the effectiveness of Wet and Forget could be made on the basis of my brief field test. Wet and Forget is a potent lichen killer. Perhaps the natural forces of wind and rain would have removed all the dead lichens from the vertical stone over time. Wet and Forget significantly reduced black mold and its resulting stain on the horizontal stone. A follow-up visit on October 3, 2022, almost a year after the previous update, showed the horizontal stone looking even better. Formerly faint patches of stain from the black mold were almost completely invisible. The vertical stone showed no sign of any renewed lichen growth. These two observations strongly suggest that Wet and Forget does indeed continue to work for weeks and months after it is applied to the surface of the gravestones. A final visit on November 8, 2022, a full 18 months after the initial application of Wet and Forget, confirmed that there was no regrowth of lichens on the vertical stone, and that the horizontal stone was almost as clean as the day when it was first set up in the cemetery in 1967. I concluded from my field test that Wet and Forget did indeed live up to its advertising. Wet and Forget, or D2 Biological Solution, really could be a slow-motion miracle for someone wanting to clean gravestones with minimum effort.